listening to the ProgAxia podcast.
The best progressive rock of 1973.
Let's get on to King Crimson. Larks, and Aspic. I think you should lead this. I've got my just to sort of say this straight off. Well, we have a little bit of a game between me and Paul because Paul's a massive King Crimson fan, and I'm not as big a fan. Okay, I think there's some problems along the line with King Crimson because we all have our own loves. We have bands that we love and times we love and things like that. And King Crimson, you talk about King Crimson, and I'm going to tell you where I fit with King Crimson afterwards.
Okay, everybody, this is where I submit my report, and Andy then marks it with a red crayon by the sound of it. So Crim, the mighty Crim. So I've discussed before about how Lizard was an important album. If you remember, you're probably drifting off when I was banging on about it, Andy. But so Crimson, 69, In the Court of the Crimson King, an album that everybody just went, really? What the and Genesis and Yes and a bunch of other bands just went, these people are so far ahead of us. So Crimson set the marker down really early. Then In the Wake of Poseidon, it just sounded like In the Court of the Crimson King, except not quite as good. So and I think they realised that, and so they went, no, we're going to be progressive again. They went off and did Lizard, which is kind of a bit jazzy and a bit weird, and everyone went, we're really confused now. And I think they kind of confused themselves a bit. But they had to steer themselves back. And this is kind of after the fact sort of rationalisation. So, they did Islands. And so I think they're beginning to work out exactly who they were. Well, Robert Fripp, essentially, working out where they wanted to go, where he wanted them to go. And there was this drummer called Bill Bruford who Fripp said, yes, you're now good enough to play with us, because he served his apprenticeship in Yes. And so this lineup, just as with Gong's lineup, this for me is the great lineup. You got John Wetton, you got Fripp, you got Bruford, and you got David Cross on violin, and Jamie Muir, a mad Scottish guy with all sorts of percussive experiments. But him and Bruford, great double act. And why do I think this is one of the greatest albums of all time? Well, I mean, if you just listen to Larks, just listen to the first track, side one, track one, Larks, Tongues in Aspic, part one. And you listen to it going, this is somewhere I haven't been before. And you're not quite sure what's coming next. And the quality of the musicianship is absolutely phenomenal. It's what they're doing with that ability, and it comes across as sort of semi-improvised. You've got some Eastern European stuff probably going on there. It sounds a bit Middle Eastern at the start. You've got some sort of weird sort of background noises coming in, and every time you think you know where it's going to go next, it then surprises you, and you suddenly get this heavy riffing guitar coming in, and then it goes somewhere else again, and you've got violin coming in. And it's an album that always, to me, surprises, astonishes, still powerful, which is everything I love about prog. Quality of musicianship, and if there's tracks that, like we talked about First and Fifth today as well, tracks you could play again and again and still go, how do they do that? I didn't quite get it. That is still amazing. This for me is still up there. And I'm going to put one bit of trivia just to try and get you over the line if I haven't done already. One of the reasons why Fripp gets his royalties, apparently, is that I think it's part two, not part one. By the way, shout out to Sid Smith, who's a great guy, writes for Prog Magazine. If you want a book on King Crimson, Andy, when's your birthday? In the Court of King Crimson, this is a fantastic book. But I think he talks about the nature of the music was such that it excited and interested the producers of Emmanuel, and they used it as part of the music soundtrack, and so he gets some credit for that. So there you go. It's music you can do anything with. Absolutely fantastic track, and I think it's the best Crimson album. Now, if I was going to take one album, In the Court of the Crimson King gets most of the highlights. most of the plaudits for being groundbreaking at the time. Red gets a lot of plaudits as well, rightly so. But this for me is the one album that I can listen to over and over again, and that track, the track you go, fantastic. Listen to it. It's 9 or so minutes of your life, and you'll be lost for 9 minutes, going, "What's happening? This is amazing," and you'll play it again. There you go. That rests me case, Miller. I've handed in my homework, Andy. I'm ready for your marking.
Okay. Right. I think you're right. and I just wanted to put my position on King Crimson. It's not that I don't like them. I think someone actually put a comment on one of the podcasts. It's, why don't you like King Crimson? It's like, it's not that I don't like them. I think, look, King Crimson. Let me just swap us over here so I can actually talk to you. There you go. Hey, King Crimson, I think have got to be up there with the top progressive bands of all time. Absolutely. I don't like them as much as probably loads of other ones. That's all it really is. I think the problem with King Crimson for me, it's just about continuity. Just beforehand, I was talking about there's times or albums or little groups of albums. It's like Pink Floyd, for instance. Pink Floyd for me, Animals, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here. That is pinnacle for me. Other people that maybe born a bit later might like The Wall better. But those 3 albums for Pink Floyd just are my Pink Floyd. That's the Pink Floyd I like to listen to. It's what I think is the pinnacle of Pink Floyd. Yep. I think Larks, Tongues and Aspic is the pinnacle of King Crimson. I absolutely love this album. So it's not that I don't like King Crimson. I just think they're a bit spotty over time, and so it's the continuity of these things. So Court of the Crimson King, that was probably the first real progressive rock album and set everybody off on on this massive journey. When people listen to Court of the Crimson King, I think they just went, "What the hell is this?" And so they set their stall out, and they said, "Look, this is what we can do." And people just went, it's like just the same as the Beatles and stuff like that. Sergeant Pepper was a big album that people went, no one's doing this stuff. And I think Court of the Crimson King was one of those albums. No one's doing this. Oh my God, we've got a lot of catching up to do. So for those sort of things, I think they've got to be up there in the upper echelons of progressive rock bands. I think there's some great tracks on Starless and Bible Black. I think there's some great tracks on Red that I like, but I don't like all the tracks on those. With this album, and when I put on the show, I put Larks, Tongues and Aspic parts 1 and 2, and I put them back to back. Yeah. And I think that chunk of music is probably some of the best progressive rock music that has ever been put together. Absolutely. So for all those people that say that I don't like this band, this wonderful band King Crimson, it's not true.
Hey, fellow Crimheads, to get to him, you've got to go through me. But here's the thing. So I hear the bit spotty argument, but here's a counter argument. So after Red, Fripp went off into a bit of exile. He went off to work on himself, and basically he disbanded the band and then brought them back together again. So late 70s, they were thinking about, are we going to come back as King Crimson or as another band? Discipline. And they came back together under the King Crimson banner. And so we're talking early 80s. Now, early 80s, Genesis had gone off into Abacab land and Turn It On Again and Misunderstanding and stuff. And Crimson are putting out Discipline and Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair. They were still progressing. They were still going somewhere. Yes, a bit of a misstep perhaps with some of the stuff they're doing. Tormato, obviously. I think Drama's a good album. But then by the time they got to Big Generator, and then they started, I think, becoming a bit pastiches of themselves. Genesis had gone somewhere. ELP, what had happened to them? Then we get into the 90s, and Crimson are putting out different stuff again. He'd gone with his two pairs, and he went with his 2/3s type concept. Fripp did. They're putting out Thrack Attack, Vroom, and taking music again somewhere different. So Trey Gunn coming in doing his stuff. And here we are in 2021. Well, let's go back to 2019, pre-COVID. And whilst there's no studio output coming out, they're still touring, they're still doing new stuff, they're still composing new stuff, which they're playing live. We talked about drummers earlier, and the interplay between two drummers on Bitch's Brew. Fripp's out there with 3 drummers with the interplay going on. Now, I would say that it's perhaps easier to accuse Crim of being spotty, but it's because they've been going for so much longer. Here we are over 50 years later, they're still trying new stuff. So maybe they are going to have 1 or 2 missteps in some people's views along that way. But I'd much rather a band like that, and Fripp, what he's doing with Levin and bringing in Jack Sick and bringing Mel Collins back and having Gavin Harrison on drums, etc. I think he's still trying to do new stuff and be vital and interesting in a way that Genesis stopped doing, and I love Genesis so many years ago, in a way that Yes stopped doing, and I love Yes so many years ago. So that would be my counter to that.
No, you're right.
Dream, I think, are carrying the torch, much more burning it. Them and Hackett. And Hackett's not creating. Hackett's obviously creating new stuff. He's got a new album out. I know that. But I don't see it as progressive in the way that the stuff he was doing a decade ago was, and what Crim are still trying to do now. So, there you go. Anyway,
I totally get that.
Book. Did I mention it? I've got vinyl. I can show you vinyl. I've got T-shirts. I've got ticket stubs. I've got
But no, I think seriously, I think you're right. They are probably the most progressive, as in moving forward and trying new things and all that sort of stuff. I think they absolutely are. And I think the only thing is that not all of it bakes my cookies. Yeah. But tracks like this, or albums like this one, Larks, and Aspic, I think is just absolutely astonishing. Sometimes I sort of think that it's King Crimson seems to be Robert Fripp's baby. Yeah. It's his baby, and
it's his project. It's a project as much as a band, I think.
Yeah, and it can reinvent itself and reinvent itself and then reinvent itself. Whereas I think with a lot of my favourite bands, they reinvent themselves as they move through their thing, but they're always them. So with Yes, you've got things like it's always Anderson and Howe as a writing team, with people coming in and supporting that writing team, but it always sort of sounds, I mean, in the old days it always sounded like a Yes album. I know we've sort of have some slightly different opinions about Towels, but Towels is a perfect example where it's just like it's Howell and Anderson building this thing, and then everybody else coming in and putting the cement in and get it up there.
Yep. But Andy, what I'm thinking is, that's just the difference between and you and I.
You're freaking me out now. You're freaking me out now. Okay, let's shovel that tortured segue in.
I'm going to talk about the Caravan of Love next. I've already done Memory Lane, but hey, I probably need to step back just so I can, while you talk, so I can reveal the artful masterpiece of this album.
Yeah, and if you're not watching on YouTube, we don't want to leave it too silent, but Paul is now demonstrating the inner cover of Yessongs, the triple live album from Yes, and he's doing a beautiful job. It's because it's obviously full of Roger Dean stuff, Roger Dean paintings, which are again just astonishing paintings. They're absolutely beautiful.
I was trying to be Anthony Redfern to your Bruce.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Do us a twirl, Paul. But no, this is absolute. I just think and you and I, we play Close to the Edge on the part one of the best progressive rock of '73, and this, I just think this track is astonishing in so many ways. Like the whole album is completely brilliant. But it wasn't the best for them at the time. I mean, you know, the actual sessions I think were really sort of, you know, pretty tortured sessions. And I think this was obviously Close to the Edge is probably the most commercially successful album. I think it like reached number 3 in the Billboard 200 chart and number 4 in the UK charts.
This got to number. This is a triple live album. It got to number 7 in the UK top whatever it was, 40 I suppose. It's got
the Yessongs.
It's
Yeah,
a triple live album. This is
that would never happen nowadays. That would never happen nowadays.
Yeah,
but no, it's I think for this track, again, I think it's probably one of the most beautiful tracks. I think it's probably it's as good as Close to the Edge. It's as good as Close to the Edge in You and I. Again, it's Bill Bruford on drums and Chris Squire, Steve Howe. You know, it's just wonderful. You know, John Anderson.
You're the drum expert. I think it's Alan White that plays drums on this live version.
I think it is actually. Yeah.
And Alan White is most of the album.
Don't you? You really have to take your hat off to Alan White. I think Alan White gets a bit of the short end of the stick in Yes, that you know he's not as good as Bill Bruford. And do you know what? I just think he's an incredible drummer. He was sort of chucked in the deep end to play live with Yes, and actually just go and do Close to the Edge live. I think I don't know about the stories, but there's stories that he was like given a week to learn it and things like that. And you know, at the end of the day, I think you know he's done a fantastic job. He is the Yes drummer now. You know,
he has been since 1972. So yeah.
I mean, if you're not the Yes drummer after you know putting in 40 years plus, and yes, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Bill Bruford's fantastic drummer. I love Bill Bruford. And I think it wouldn't be the same if it wasn't Bill Bruford on you know this album, Close to the Edge album. But I just think we should all give Alan White a bit of a hat tip that you know what he's actually done over the years. And there's some fantastic again, Tales from Topographic Oceans. Alan White's drumming on that is just phenomenal. When you consider the sort of music that is.
Yeah. But here's the thing about this album for me, because I mean, you look at the track listing. I mean, well, it starts. You got that excerpt from the Firebird Suite, and then it comes in with Siberian Catro, and you know, if you're not got by then, you'll never be got because it's like this is fantastic. And you read the track listing, and it's got pretty much everything you want on it, hasn't it? You've got Heart and Sunrise, Perpetual Change, Mood for a Day, Roundabout, Long Distance Runaround, All Good People, Your Mood. I mean, fantastic. Produced by Yes and Eddie Offord, the typical production team. It doesn't come across that well produced. I know it's a live album. It's probably back in analog days, obviously, and all the rest of it. But it's just a little bit muddy to me at times. Not quite as crisp and clear, which is such a shame because the track listing is to die for. What else could they put on it? Southside, Heart of the Sunrise or something maybe. Anyway, they got Heart of Sunrise. Anyway, really great triple album, but I would say just slightly muddy production. Is that the technical word for it?
Yeah, I mean it's done on a mobile. You know, it's done on a mobile studio. And you know those days, I don't think they were as good as that. The weird thing is that when I first started listening to this, it made me feel like I was sitting in the audience. Now I've you know done my own recording stuff. I've been in recording studios and understand the sort of dynamics of you know recording and things like that. You know, you listen back and it's probably not as good as it should be. But the secret of this is, and I listened to Yessongs about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I've realised what the secret of it is to make it sound better. Turn it up. I'm not joking. When you listen to it at a normal level, it sounds a bit weak.
Yeah.
You rank the volume up, and suddenly you just feel like you're in the auditorium with them. And I don't know why that is, because normally just turning up doesn't make much of a difference, apart from it's sort of louder. And
but here's the thing: seeing as you insist I talk about King Crimson a bit more, I will do. So the Mighty Crim's next album was The Stars and Bible Black, which you referenced, and whilst that came out as a studio album, as Crimheads know, it's pretty much a live album. But the concert recordings are so good, so pristine that you think I'm listening to a studio album. Yeah. So there's something about, and it's only a few months later than this comes out. So I don't think it's just down. I just don't think progressively, and I'm a big Yes fan. Eddie offered fantastic. I just don't think they got it quite right for whatever reason. I don't know if it makes me just a bit worn or whatever. But yeah. Anyway, I'll stop talking about
that's one of the reasons why I gave you that tip. Turn it up, and it does make a difference. Louder. It does make a difference. I don't know why, but I think this is a good point to. You have been. Well, you're in Prog magazine.
Thank you very much.
And I think
that's a nice segue.
It needs a bit of a segue. So tell us a little bit about what it's about. And
well, the world's best prog magazine just got slightly better because the wise people at Prog Mag have very kindly included on the Paper Lake column, which probably most people turn to straight away, page 20 for anyone listening at home. They've actually very kindly put in an article on what I'm doing. What I'm doing is asking people to let me know what they think about prog rock, why they like it, why they love it. So there's some fairly well-crafted words in there that try and bring that to life. So if anyone wants to get in touch, or just get your Prog magazine, it's a really great read, and every month, and always comes with a CD of great music as well. So so thanks, Andy, seriously. They put an article, and on the front they got Peter Hamill, who we probably haven't spoken enough about on this program. He is, again, talking about someone like Fripp, who keeps taking stuff forward. Hamill's still producing stuff. I think Van de Graaf, the trio, are back on the road as soon as they can, etc. But anyway, different subject. But yeah, thank you. So, Prog magazine, even better this month than usual.
And the reason for the mention is because you're doing a PhD in progressive rock.
I am,
and we've asked people if they're interested to talk to you about their experience of progressive rock to get in touch.
Yeah.
So
and literally dozens of people have done and had a discussion with me about it, and so sometime before too long it's going to be great to be able to share what's coming out of this. Because essentially the people that have written about it and said, I know why people like prog rock, or I know why prog rock doesn't work for people. It's like, frankly, a lot of them have got it wrong. That's going to be great to be able to sort of play back to people. This is what's coming out of the research and the analysis, and why we like it so much. So, hey, Andy, maybe an opportunity to set the record straight.
Right. So yeah, let's go on to Eloy. The track I played was Future City, and that's from the Inside album. Is this the second album of this German progressive rock band, Eloy? And again, I think Eloy are one of those bands that again are sort of not thought about in the higher echelons, but there's. Well, you tell me what you think about this album first. And
I'm going to have to declare me hand early here. I have very little to offer here. Whilst I early got into Can, well, did I get into them? I started listening to them. So Egeban Yazzie, Tego Mago, but it didn't quite, well, as you would say, didn't quite bake my cookies.
Thank you, cookies.
Yeah, so I didn't quite salute it as it went up the flagpole. So when I started hearing about sort of other bands like Noi and Faust and the Cosmisha krautrock stuff, I gave it a bit of a swerve really, and so my very small part of one of my smallest toes, it got dipped in the small amount of water, was with Kraftwerk, which I quite liked. But it's only recently I've started again listening to those Can albums I mentioned. So, but again, it's not really quite for me. So I do not know Eloy. I do not own an album of theirs. That style of music, if I can just talk generically and rather ignorantly, to me it just drifts a bit and doesn't quite get somewhere as much as I want it to. And in that way, it's a bit similar to the Nectar album stuff we were talking about earlier. So Gong works for me because stuff seems to be happening. It seems to be going somewhere, and it's working in a time span that works for me in terms of great. It's not just drifting too far for too long. I'm afraid this stuff has left me a bit.
You seem to be breaking up a little bit, Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, that's better. You just pop back in.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm just saying the style of music doesn't quite work for me because it kind of drifts a bit and doesn't quite go anywhere quick enough for me. Doesn't interest me enough. Isn't, dare I say, progressive enough. Doesn't sort of challenge enough. It's kind of like, I think I've got it. So you can stop now, but they don't stop and they keep going for another 5-10 minutes. And it's like, no, I've really got it now. You can really do something else. So I'm afraid I'm not going to try and sell people on this one.
No, and again, I think you're pretty much bang on. The only reason I put this in is again because I think it's an important album.
Yeah.
It's part of the process of focusing on a year and seeing what was around at that time. And Eloy aren't my favourite. But the thing with this album is it's again one of those albums that I bought at the time. Well, not in 73. I bought this probably again 76, 77 when I was sort of prolifically buying this sort of music. And I've got to tell you, when I put it on, didn't like it that much. It was a bit too retrospective for me. It's like it was back to the old days. But over the years, I've listened to this a lot more, and I've got to really like it for one specific reason. To me, this sounds like old Floyd in some ways. There is an old Floyd vibe going on. So pre-Animals, pre-Dark Side of the Moon.
So we're talking Astronomy, Donomain, Interstellar Overdrive, that type of stuff, yeah.
Sort of that sort of era, and sort of coming up to. It's almost like some of the music on Echoes, or Metal rather.
Yeah,
it's sort of similar to some of this stuff. I don't think it's as good as Floyd, but it's got that sort of vibe, that sort of weird spacey rock thing going on, a little bit strange, a little bit out there, that sort of thing. And it wasn't like some of the earlier stuff, which was sort of political in nature. This was more, we're just gonna do space rock. It's like it was like they almost put politics to one side because they used to be quite political. So I'm going to put politics to one side and just do space rock albums. So again, this is one of that I don't think is actually the best album in the world. It's one of those albums that I had at a point in my life. I played it quite a lot. I got into it. I quite enjoyed it, and so and I think they're an important band to remember, Eloy. So that's the reason why I put it on the show, was purely because of that. But there's some great organ stuff in it, some great guitar riffs in it, and the vocals are actually okay on this one because they're normally a bit ropey. But there's stuff that sounds like, if you listen to like you first part start putting it on, and there's a bit that sounds a bit like Cray Slick, White Rabbit.
Yeah.
There's a bit like that, and then there's I think it's on first track, Land of Nobody, and then you sort of listen to other bits and pieces, and there's some weird percussion with wild guitars over it and weird guitars over it. And then it goes very normal for a bit, and then so it's it's sort of tight, it's moody, it's typical of sort of 70s recordings, quite compressed and things like that. But I think it's a key album. It's a key album to know about and probably have in your collection. But I don't think it's the best album in the world. But it's a really good album. And they were named after the those creatures in H.G. Wells'
Time Machine,
wasn't it? Yeah.
The Eloy and the Morlocks.
The Eloy and the Morlocks, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to go down memory lane, do we? How did I do? I'm not as good as a segue as you, but yeah, brilliant. Yeah. For girls
who go plump in the night, talking of bad puns. So here's the thing. For so long I've loved Caravan, and I'd always talk about In the Land of Grey and Pink. I've got God knows how many versions on vinyl and CDs of it, and 9 Feet Underground. They still play it live, and it's brilliant. And I played this album for the first time in probably at least 5 years, a little while ago, and I'm reforming my opinion on the best Caravan album. I really like this. This is fantastic. They had some personnel changes. They lost one Sinclair and got another Sinclair. Richard left and Dave came in from Matching Mole, talking of sort of soft machine type stuff. But
Richard Sinclair and Steve Miller left.
Yes, Jeffrey Richardson came in with that wonderful viola sound.
Yes,
and this album just, I guess, Pi Hastings took more control at this stage, but with Jeffrey, but later on. But it rocks. I mean, this I was really enjoying listening. So the track you chose, Memory Lane, Hugh, but it goes into Headloss, and you got all sorts of other stuff, and this is a really good album. So I'm reforming my opinion. If you're going to listen to one album of Caravans, if you've never heard them, then maybe start with this one instead. Start with For Girls Who Grow Plump in the Night. Fantastic, really enjoyed it. So yeah, I think I've reappraised the albums. So much as I'm a big fan of In the Land of Grey and Pink, I think if people want to start on a Caravan album, start with this. Waterloo Lily, the previous album, was taking them in a bit more of a jazzy direction. I think the two people perhaps quite involved with that had left the band. So they got a new lineup, or semi-new lineup, partially new lineup. And this album really kind of rocks out. You've got some great interplay with the viola of Jeffrey Richardson. I think there's good dynamics. And on the track, you've chosen Memory Lane. You sort of like, you think it's coming to an end, and then it doesn't, and it comes back in again. So this for me is probably their last great album, and it is a good one. So For Girls Who Grow Plump in the Night, I don't know. That's what do you think? I love it.
I do love it. I mean, it's. I think it's a bit more commercial because obviously Richard Sinclair, Steve Miller left, Dave Sinclair came back in, and it's one of these last few albums. There's been sort of people going in, people going out, and each of those albums sort of changed. And we spoke about like Waterloo Lily was a different vibe, and this is a different vibe, and it's got a sort of country and folk elements. It's like a very weird album to me as a Caravan album. It's just like, it sort of seems a little bit weird, but I'd love it. I do love it myself. I mean, I think it's a great album, but it's almost like some of it sounds like they've been listening to Southern Boogie bands and decided to put some of that in as well.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of sort of like Allman Brothers or something, but
yeah.
So see, I think this album takes them back to kind of where they were within the Land of Grey and Pink. I think Waterloo Lily was a bit of a diversion. So they sort of come back online, as it were. So yeah, it's a bit of, yeah, I can see that. I can see that. But see, and I think part of that it's probably less more commercial is because if you think of Land and Grey and Pink, it had stuff like Golf Girl on it, which is bit of whimsy, and was it Winter Wine, isn't it? I think, which is quite bucolic and pastoral and everything. And there's less of that. Yeah, but there's less of that on this album. I think it's more of a rock album in that regard. So
it almost sounds like they've decided to have fun on this.
Yes, they
and
did.
Enjoy themselves.
Yeah,
don't take it too seriously, and just do a great album. And it is a great album,
And it's got the dog, he's at it again, which if you haven't heard that, which starts side 2, yeah, that's a fun track, yeah. And they still do, and they're still doing some of these in concerts nowadays. And rather sad, but I see Rupert Hines' name here, so he was on the ARP Art Synthesizer. Rupert Hine used to live not far from where I am, and he died just in the past year or so. But Rupert Hine, people will know him perhaps from Saga and Rush, and all sorts of people he worked with, Bob Geldof, I think. And anyway, yeah. So Rupert Hine was on the album as well. Oh, before I forget, did you see earlier in the week Jim Steinman, the late now late great Jim Steinman, the man behind Bat Out of Hell, passed away on Monday.
We are living in a time where a lot of our sort of the musicians that we grew up with,
Jim Steinman
are going,
yeah.
So
Rupert Hine. But anyway, a rockier album, still with some good fun parts in it as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. And again, if you've not really sort of got into Caravan, that little trilogy of albums that we spoke about are, the ones to go for. I think they are the pinnacle of Caravan. Land of Grey and Pink. I love Waterloo Lily. I think Waterloo Lily is a great album. And this one as well, just so if you're going to go for one, if you was going to go for one, would you go for this one? Do you think?
I maybe I've overplayed in the Land of Grey and Pink, and maybe I've heard because their live set is still very much based around that. So maybe I've just got overexposed slightly to it. So yeah, just hearing this again for the first time so recently, I've switched my allegiances slightly. So, but there's also a fantastic double album, The Best of Caravan. So, which really is the best of it. It does have Waterloo Lily title track on it. So, if you want to start anywhere, then go for the double greatest hits.
I think that would probably be a good. Yeah, if you've got one into before, I think that might be a good thing. Yeah. So, listen, Paul, that's all we got time for, mate. And thanks for joining me again. This has been absolutely brilliant. So, join us next time. We're going to be talking about 1974. All our podcasts are on all the major platforms. I'll put all the links below. They're on YouTube as well. So, until next time, we'll see you all later. Ta-da.
Prog on.
Please don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you like the videos, please share them as much as you can on social media. Like, comment, and give us a thumbs up. And you can listen to our radio shows on Mixcloud. Just search for Rockin' Rebel Radio.